Larry was a perfect definition of a dream man, tall, dark, incredibly handsome and unimaginably wealthy. He had everything a man could dream of: wealth, a luxury, and good looks. He was the man every woman desired and wanted to be with, the life of the party, and the center of attention. His presence alone commanded attention, and wherever he went, women adored him, always clingy to his side, drawn to his charisma and fortune. Social gatherings, clubs, and high-end parties were never complete without Larry. Everything about him screamed power and affluence. His cars were the latest models, his mansion was the envy of many, and his wardrobe consisted of the most finest and expensive designers. But despite his riches, there was one thing his money couldn't fix: his terrible mouth odor. His breath smelled worse than a rotten corpse. It wasn't just bad, it was so unbearable. The stench was so repulsive that even his closest associates kept their distance, talking to him from afar. The stench was so strong that anyone who stood near him had to hold their breath or find an excuse to leave. His breath smelled so awful that many people avoided getting too close to him, and it drove some people away. No one could explain it. People whispered behind his back, how could a good-looking man have such unbearable mouth odor? They wondered why a man so refined could have such dreadful breath. Some people whispered that it smelled like something had died inside him. His employees never stood too close, and his friends kept a distance. No one dared to ask him, but they all knew, being close to Larry was impossible. The only ones who endured it were women who were after his money. Women who see him as a ticket to luxury. They faked smiles, forced themselves to stay around him, and pretended not to notice his foul breath, all for the luxury lifestyle he provided. But deep down, Larry knew they didn't love him, they only loved what he had. Larry was frustrated. He longed for true love, for someone who would be with him not because of his wealth but because they truly cared and loved him. But every time he thought he had found the right woman, she would eventually run away, unable to withstand his bad breath for long. One fateful evening, Larry met Anita at an exclusive business gala. She was a smart, elegant woman who carried herself with confidence. Unlike others, she wasn't awestruck by his wealth. As they conversed, Anita suddenly caught a whiff of something unpleasant. Maybe he just ate something weird, she thought, dismissing it as a one-time occurrence. But as the evening progressed, the odor didn't fade, it lingered. Still, she decided to give him benefit of doubt. Their connection grew, and soon, they became inseparable. Larry really loved Anita. She wasn't just another woman after his money. As time passed, Anita realized that Larry's breath wasn't a temporary issue as she had thought, it was permanent. No matter what time of day, no matter what he ate, the stench remained. Anita couldn't ignore the problem: his breath was awful. It was so horrible that she had to turn her face away when they spoke. Unlike others who silently suffered or ran away, Anita wanted to help. Determined to help the man she had fallen for, Anita took it upon herself to help him find a solution. She dragged him to the best dentist, believing it was an oral hygiene issue and hoping for a medical solution. They tested him for every possible condition, but nothing was wrong with him physically. She introduced him to a herbalist seeking for ancient remedies. They gave him countless concoctions, special mouthwashes, and several remedies, but still, nothing worked or changed. She even convinced him to try spiritual deliverance, thinking it could be a spiritual problem or a curse. But still, the problem remained the same. She took him to nutritionist, the problem still remained the same. She took him to a therapist, the problem remained the same. She even took him to prayer houses, hoping for a miracle, but no amount of prayers seemed to help. All efforts failed and his breath remained as terrible as ever. Larry followed Anita everywhere, knowing fully well that none of it would work. He played along, pretending to be hopeful, but deep inside he knew the truth. He had made a choice long ago, and no amount of medicine or prayer would change it. But he couldn't let Anita suspect anything, so he followed her, dodging her questions, hoping she will eventually give up. But Anita, however, remained patient, determined to find a cure. She refused to give up. She loved him and was ready to go extra mile just to make sure that they get a solution, and she believed that one day they would find a cure. At first, Larry admired Anita's dedication, as no girl had ever cared for him the way she does, but as time passed, he began to feel suffocated by her obsession to find cure. Every time they met, it was the same thing: new remedies, new appointments, new treatments. She was convinced that she could fix him. He grew tired of it. Anita became so focused on curing his breath that he neglected intimacy. Every night they were together, Larry begged her to be with him, but she would brush him off, claiming she had new remedies to try. Anita focused all her energy on his problem. The horrible stench had killed her desire. She avoided being too close to him, unable to stand the odor anymore. The more she avoided intimacy, the more frustrated Larry became. He still loved her, but he resented how she had turned their relationship into a medical experiment and a mission to fix him. Feeling neglected, Larry started seeking comfort elsewhere. He began frequently clubs and parties, surrounding himself with women who didn't care about his breath as long as his money flowed. He stopped calling Anita as often. Whenever she reached out, he gave her excuses: "I'm busy, I have meetings. I'll call you later." He started avoiding her, though he tried not to make it obvious. Anita, too busy in search of remedies, was unaware of his growing distance. She continued her desperate search for a cure. She believed that once everything was fresh again, everything will return to normal, but it never did. One day, Anita decided to surprise Larry with a visit. She had just found a renowned healer who claimed to cure even the most mysterious conditions. Excited, she arrived at his mansion unannounced, letting herself in quietly with the spare key he had given her and planning to sneak up on him, as she couldn't wait to share the good news with him. She searched the living room and he wasn't there, so she decided to go to his bedroom. When she got to his bedroom, he was nowhere to be found. Anita wondered where he was. Just then, she heard faint noises coming from the bathroom. Curious, she approached the door, which was slightly opened, and peeked inside. What she saw made her blood freeze and her entire body tremble in disgust. Larry was crouched near the toilet, eating poop with his bare hands. Anita let out a scream that echoed through the house. Larry turned his head in horror, his mouth covered with filth. His eyes widened in shock. His worst nightmare had come true: someone had caught him. They locked eyes, one filled with terror and disbelief and the other with shame. For a moment, neither of them moved, then Anita ran. She ran as fast as she could, fleeing from the mansion, unable to comprehend what she had just seen. She couldn't believe it. The man she had loved, the man she has been trying to fix, have been hiding something unimaginable. Word spread quickly. At first, people refused to believe it. But Anita's reaction, her sudden disappearance from his life, and the whispers among his closest associates made the rumors impossible to ignore. Years ago, Larry had been a struggling, jobless graduate desperate for success. He had searched for opportunities but found none. Tired of several disappointments and rejections, he turned to a powerful native doctor who promised him an unimaginable wealth, but with a horrifying condition. The ritual required him to eat poop every Friday, and as long as he followed the instructions, he would remain rich. The only side effect was his terrible mouth odor. Desperate, Larry had agreed. His fortune had changed overnight. From rags to riches, he had everything he had ever dreamed of, except fresh breath. Now that someone had caught him in act, the spell was broken. The native doctor's warning had been very clear: if anyone ever saw him eating poop, his wealth would vanish forever. And vanish it did. Within days, Larry lost everything: his bank accounts emptied, his assets were seized, his business collapsed. No one wanted to be near him, not because of his breath anymore, but because they knew the horrifying truth. The people who once surrounded him vanished, and even the gold diggers who had tolerated his breath abandoned him. He was left with nothing but his shame. With nothing left, Larry fell into despair. He had sacrificed everything for wealth, and now he had nothing, not even dignity. For the first time after so many years, Larry had nothing. No money, no power, no fake admirers, and no fake friends. All he had was the weight of his own shame. With nowhere to turn, Larry fell into deep despair. But in his lowest moment and hopelessness, he remembered Anita's words about God's power to heal anything. For the first time in years, he walked into a church. He fell to his knees, confessing everything and asking God for forgiveness. He surrendered his life to Christ, realizing that his desperate quest for wealth had led him down the path of destruction. And then, something miraculous happened. As he embraced his new life of faith, his breath began to change. The terrible odor that had plagued him for years was gone. For the first time in a long time, he could hold conversation with anyone without them stepping back. He had lost all his riches, but for Larry, the fresh breath and the ability to be around people without shame meant more than any amount of money. He has found peace, and that was a treasure no wealth could ever buy. Months passed since Larry's world crumbled. He was no longer the powerful, wealthy man everyone admired. He was back to square one, struggling to rebuild his life. But for the first time in years, he felt free. His breath was fresh again, people no longer recoiled when he spoke, when he could hold a conversation without fear. He had given his life to Christ, and though he had lost his wealth, he had gained something far greater, peace. Meanwhile, Anita had tried to erase him from her mind. The memory of what she had seen that day haunted her for months. The betrayal, the lies, and the horror catching him in such disgusting act had shattered her trust completely. But deep inside, she still felt something, pity. One day, Anita overheard people talking about Larry.
Did you hear? Larry changed. He's no longer the same person. I heard he lost everything, but at least his bad breath is gone. He's been going to church. Seems like he's truly different now.
Anita felt a mix of emotions, relief, curiosity, and an old, buried pain. She had once loved him deeply. Even though he had hurt her, she couldn't deny that a part of her still cared. After much thought, she decided to see him one last time. Anita found Larry in a small church, sitting quietly praying. He looked different, no designer suits, no expensive jewelry, just a simple man at peace with himself. She acknowledged his growth and forgave him, not for his sake but for her own peace of mind. However, she made it clear that their relationship could never be rekindled. The past had left scars too deep to mend. Larry accepted her decision without protest. He understood that some mistakes could never be undone. Though he had lost her forever, he had gained something far more valuable: redemption, inner peace, and the chance to live without the weight of his shame. His journey had been painful, but it had taught him an undeniable truth. True wealth isn't in riches, but in peace, honesty, and the freedom to live without regret and shame.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to Hopela Stories.